you were to ask me what I thought of church about 15 years ago, I would tell you that it was a place for me to pray. And since I could pray anywhere, I don't need to go to church. Right? I don't need to go there. I could talk to God anywhere I wanted to. That the four walls of this man-made building could not contain my God in their vastness. I would then begin to talk about the use of church to influence politics, to colonize the people of the Philippines, to unlawfully convert the indigenous people of the United States, to justify war and violence in history, to suppress, oppress, and exploit people. How the long history of religious trauma inflicted on generations of people perpetuated the continued cycles of abuse, misinformation, and manipulation. I would, in my smugness, point to well-documented cases of holy wars or prosperity ministers who purchase private planes on the backs of working-class congregations, and I would remain angry and unmoved. If you can't tell, I was a real peach in my 20s. I was a dark, brooding type, but I was hungry for community, constantly feeling betrayed by it. And it's always at those critical junctures, those moments of betrayal, that I make the crucial decision: should I stay and accept the system for what it is and change it from the inside? Or should I find a new community? Or worse, should I even look for a community at all? If I could reach back to my younger self, I would gently remind him that yes, you are right. Right about what? Right about all of it. The betrayal, the history, the presence of corruption. But I would also remind him that nestled in the highlands of Ethiopia, there are these long stretches of desert land, barren from overfarming. In those areas, enclosed in circular spaces, you could find something called a church forest, an ecological and spiritual sanctuary, a vivid testament to the harmonious coexistence of nature and faith. These sacred groves, which surround ancient Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo churches, have stood as guardians of biodiversity for centuries. Unlike the increasingly deforested landscapes of the Ethiopian highlands, the church forest are lush green oases, brimming with endemic plant species, towering trees, and wildlife. These pockets of greenery are often the only remnants of the original forest cover, providing invaluable ecological services such as water purification, soil stabilization, and climate regulation. Each church forest is more than just a natural habitat. It's a repository of cultural heritage and religious significance. The faithful believe these forests are earthly embodiments of heaven, a place where the divine and the mortal realms converge. As custodians of both faith and environment, the priests oversee the protection and management of these groves, ensuring they remain untouched. Strict rules, often rooted in religious tenets, forbid the cutting of trees or any form of exploitation, thus preserving the sacred groves for future generations. Just on the other end of the bridge towards Queens in this distant, distant land called Long Island, sits this UU faith community in Manhasset, New York, called the Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Shelter Rock. Their congregation sits on 100 acres of land with untouched wild flora, resting on top of an aquifer, which is a body of water that rests on top of the sediment underneath. The congregation there are stewards of that land and have committed to protecting its natural features. So whether it's the story of Ethiopia's church forest or the inspiring work of Shelter Rock, their commitment to the land around them, these are all compelling examples of how faith and environmental stewardship can intertwine, offering lessons of sustainability and reverence for the natural world. But we can go even further to say that these churches and congregations also have another thing in common. They are religious communities that shape the world we live in for the better. I would remind my younger self that a congregation is a place where people come together to form a community. It is more than the four walls. It's a collective of individuals who support one another, share in each other's joys and sorrows, and work together towards common goals. In this sense, the congregation can be a powerful source of strength and unity. When speaking about the many shapes of church, I'm reminded of one of the most profound examples of church serving their communities in diverse ways, the labor churches of Canada, not to be confused with the labor churches of England. That's a different thing. The labor churches of Canada explores the development, Labor Churches of Canada. In an article written by Tara Ingrid Ludmer called The Rise and Fall of Canada's Labor Churches, Ludmer explores the development and demise of labor churches in Canada, which emerged as a fusion of the social gospel and political activism. Notable figures like J.S. Woodworth and William Ivins led the movement, initially driven by the dissatisfaction with traditional churches' insufficient social reform efforts. These labor churches aimed to unite religion and the working class in their concerns, advocating for justice and economic equality. Despite the initial success, the movement struggled due to the leaders' multifaceted roles in an eventual shift and broader societal changes, ultimately failing to sustain themselves because they could neither fully address the religious needs nor effectuate social objectives. However, one of the amazing parts of this story is how these churches formed organically and born out of the concerns of the people, and how people ultimately created these churches to reflect their current reality, uniting their faith with hope and action. Similarly, the community church movement of the 1920s to the 1940s saw churches transforming into community centers that offered social services and support to diverse populations. The community church movement emerged as a response to the growing need for churches to serve as more than just places of worship. This movement was centered around the idea that churches should act as community hubs, providing social services, educational programs, and support to their local populations. This period saw an increasing emphasis on social justice and the role of the church in addressing societal issues, thus transforming the functions of religious institutions. The Riverside Church of New York City, founded in 1927, is one of the most notable examples of community church. It's established during this period and conceived as a place where social issues could be addressed alongside spiritual needs. Riverside Church became a symbol of the movement and its ideas. It offered a wide range of services, including community outreach initiatives. And this brings me to the role of churches in the civil rights movement. The Black church played an instrumental role in the civil rights movement in America, serving as much more than a place of worship. Again, it was the backbone of the struggle for racial equity. Historically, the Black church provided a haven for African Americans, offering spiritual solace as well as a platform for social and political activism. The unique position of the Black church within the Black community made it an effective force for mobilization and protest. One of the key functions of the Black church during the civil rights movement was a meeting place where churches hosted mass meetings, which were essential for organizing protests, planning strategies, and disseminating information. These gatherings provided a safe space where individuals could come together to discuss the challenges they faced and to formulate collective responses. Notably, churches like Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, became famous for their activism, led by prominent figures such as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Black church also offered sanctuary to activists. During heightened tensions and violent backlash from segregationists, churches provided refuge to those who risked their lives for the cause. For instance, the 16th Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, was critical for the civil rights meetings and marches despite the dangers, including the tragic bombing in 1963 that killed 4 young girls: Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Denise McNair, and Carol Robertson. Beyond logistics, the Black church imbued the civil rights movement with a strong moral, spiritual foundation. Sermons from leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Ralph Abernathy and countless others drew on biblical themes of justice, freedom, and deliverance. These messages of hope and moral righteousness reinforced the legitimacy and urgency of the civil rights struggle. Furthermore, the Black church was pivotal in economic support of the movement. Congregations across the nation pooled their resources together to fund legal defenses, to bail out protesters, support families affected by the struggle. This financial backing was crucial in sustaining a long-term campaign. Now, this may sound like I'm building a case for the existence of church, and yeah, it is. But it's also to remind us of our heritage, that those churches are part of our history. I want to emphasize here that I do not believe that all churches, all faith communities are inherently good or bad. The intention of a faith community rests solely on the people who occupy it. That reality is shaped based on the vision and action of these communities through the framework of their beliefs. It's also important to acknowledge here that churches, congregations, covenantal communities, like any human institution, are not without their flaws. Faith communities will fail to live up to their ideas in one way or another. However, just as easily as one church will reject you, there are other churches who will welcome you in, who will feed you and accept you for who you are and renew your sense of purpose and ignite the flame of love in your heart. Just as easily as one church will remain stagnant, frozen in time, unable to keep up with the rapidly changing world, there are communities who are willing to pivot, willing to adapt and critically hear new ideas. Just as easily as one congregation will hurt you, will exclude you, invalidate you, there are other communities who will remind you of your worth and dignity, who will love you in the fullness of your humanity and help you heal the isolation, the broken trust, and in turn give you an opportunity to heal others. And just as easily as one church will fall into the habit of turning inward, there are others who will bravely face society, build networks of care, and work with other communities to face the troubles of the world and say, yes, we can make a difference. The presence of church, covenantal community, faith community, fellowship, congregation, it has endured throughout time. Their presence is here and it will not be erased. But it's up to us to turn away that which serves itself and turn towards that which shelters all. Amen and blessed be.
Everyone, welcome to Fourth U's Getting the Message. I'm Kerwin Seeger. I use he, they pronouns, and I am the religious education assistant for Fourth U, and I'm joined by our lovely seminarian today, and I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Erol Delos Santos. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a sponsored seminarian here at my home congregation, the Fourth Universalist Society.
We're so happy to have you back home, Erol. Welcome. So, can you maybe share a little bit about how a UU congregation has significantly contributed to societal project or community welfare? That seems to be your topic today.
Yeah.
So how do you think that journey goes through history almost?
Well, I can name one specific example, and I mentioned it in the sermon, which is the congregation in Long Island in Manhasset, New York, called the Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Shelter Rock, owns about 100 acres of land, and in that land there are natural woods that haven't been touched, wild native species that have always lived and thrived there, and where their neighbors would manicure their lawns and and tear down these trees to make it a more even landscape, they actually preserve those woods, and their property sits on top of an aquifer, which is in Long Island is one of the primary sources of water. Here in Manhattan, we get our water piped in from reservoirs and things, but their source of water is groundwater, and they sit on this large aquifer that is untouched, and they have committed themselves to protecting that aquifer. So that is not unique to that one specific congregation. There are many congregations who take care of their land, especially out in the suburbs and the rural areas, who use their land for community gardens, say, or preserving wildlife and flora. So that's just one way, but I think that's a really great way to for UU congregations to understand that their land is connected to them. Like, a healthy land means a healthy people, and
That's such a great example for something that's so local to us. You know, not to shade Long Island as a Long Islander. You know, it's right in our backyard as Manhattanites here. So seeing all the great work that UUs do and UU congregations do, there's still quite a bit of change that needs to happen, and especially as we kind of take UU into the more modern day.
Yeah.
So, how do we engage with those needs and engage with evolving to serve the needs of society today, while also holding true to what makes us true as UUs?
So, Unitarian Universalists hold on to a theology that is rooted in a living tradition.
Okay.
That we actually, as UUs, respond to the world as it changes. I think one of the ways that we can honor the tradition of this like living tradition, is that we do pivot and adapt and take account of the changing world around us. And being aware of it and engaging in it is part of our tradition. Yeah. So. Yeah.
That's a really unique way to think about that. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's a really interesting perspective. So, kind of as we wrap up, is there any major call to action that you would like to kind of give us as we kind of head out to make those changes and engage with like using the UU space as a space that is welcoming and inclusive and engaging?
That's an interesting question, the way you phrased it, a call to action. I'm an anarchist, and I
Okay.
believe in direct action. I find that in some spaces I occupy, that there is like this awareness of different things to get involved with, and we plan around it, and we get to that point, and something happens and stops us from moving forward. I think the best type of wisdom I can impart here is to do the thing, right? We have to actually do the thing. So, yes, check in with yourself, make sure an action aligns with the principles and your value system. But also, when you get to the point where you have to actually do something, do it. And so I don't have a specific thing, but I think this is an important piece of information to get out there.
Yeah, really amazing. Whatever it is, just do it. This
Just
is
do the
really,
thing, yeah.
because we tend to get caught up in talking, not just in
Right.
UU, in society as a whole. So
Right.
breaking down that and doing whatever you need to do is
Right.
important.
We get caught up in the bureaucracy, the red tape. We create barriers for ourselves to actually get the job done.
And it gets in the way of getting it done. Yeah,
That's
it's,
right.
it's important. So any closing thoughts or anything before, as we kind of wrap up our time here?
I think that's it. But also, we kind of have to remind ourselves what Unitarian Universalism is and how it affects the world. And I think just the constant reminding ourselves of what it is and how it moves in the world will help us get to where we need to go.
Such powerful words to be left on. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another Getting the Message. Have a great week, Fourth U.